Hello everyone, it's Karen. Welcome to another album review. Now today we're going to do an album review from some artists that I've wanted to talk about. Haven't talked about for a while, but I wanted to speak about. And that's going to be Simon and Garfunkel, and we're going to be reviewing their album Parsley, Sage, Rosemary and Thyme. And the reason we're going over Simon and Garfunkel is because I was watching the documentary about the Bridge Over Troubled Water album, and I enjoyed it, so I thought I would talk about one of their albums. So I wanted to do this one simply because it's one I've really liked for many years. So I thought I'd show you, go over the album's history, show you my copies of the album, go over each track individually, and give the album as a whole a marking out of 10. So, Simon and Garfunkel's third album was released on the 24th of October 1966. It was their third album, and it was released on Columbia Records. Prior to this album, Simon and Garfunkel had been going for a good few years. They had been known since the 1950s with Tom and Jerry, with Hey Schoolgirl, which was a major hit, and then they returned in 1964 as Simon and Garfunkel and recorded and released their first album, Wednesday Morning 3 AM. But however, that album didn't do so well commercially or critically at the time, and kind of Simon and Garfunkel went their separate ways for a bit and went to different things. Paul moved to England, to London, where he continued his songwriting and did some studied at Columbia University architecture. And then they kind of came back because the song The Sounds of Silence had become a big hit. And so that had got re-released, which had been on Wednesday Morning 3 AM. That got re-released as a single, and they rushed recorded the second album, Sounds of Silence, which we'll touch upon in more detail sort of later on in the video. And we would do that video. And so with this album, with this third album, they were given 4 months to record the album, and it allowed them to considerable freedom in creativity. And this was the first time that kind of Paul Simon insisted on total control in the aspects of recording. And it was the first album to be recorded on. It was their first album to be recorded on an 8-track tape recorder, and this allowed them to persuaded Columbia Records to use. They persuaded Columbia Records to use this. They would overdub, and they found it difficult, and the vocal takes would be overdubbed onto, as they found it difficult to get decent separation between Paul's voice and the guitar. And the album had been recorded from December 1965 until August of 1966, and as some of these songs were actually leftovers from the Sounds of Silence sessions the year before, and most of which had been, and they had considered recording one of the songs to be the moment the duo stepped into the role of producer, because they were constantly beside Roy Halley mixing the track. So the album took 8 months to make, and it was recorded in I don't know where it was recorded, but I think it would have been like Columbia Studios in New York. So the album was released in October of 1966. It peaked at number 4 in the US in 1966. At the time in the UK, I don't think it charted in the UK, and it wouldn't be until 1968 with the kind of on the back of the success of like Bookends and the Graduate soundtrack, which they did a lot of music for. So yeah, great album, one of my favourite ones. So I'm going to show you my copy of the album. This was the first vinyl copy of the album I owned. This is a stereo copy. Nice cover. I know some people don't like this cover, but I think it's a nice cover. I quite like it. There's the back. The line notes to the songs. And this I think is a 70s repressing, but it's still on the original orange CBS label that appeared on in the 1960s. So I found this one on Amazon many years ago, and I was becoming a bit of a Simon and Garfunkel fan, and I was like getting heavily into vinyl collecting, which was a good few years ago. I found this back in 2015. I have a couple of CD copies to show. This is a mono vinyl copy, an original from 1966. I bought this in a record shop in Newcastle in 2016. Got it because it was mono. It was nice to have. It's quite difficult to get these albums in mono, but I managed to find it. If I can find the other one, Sounds of Silence in mono, I'll definitely get that one. There's that one. Last vinyl copy I have to show is this one. This is a Holland pressing, but this uses the American track listing because Homeward Bound, which had been recorded during the Sounds of Silence sessions, was on certain pressings of this album and not on UK pressings. So this is the American track listing, but a Holland version. This is an 80s, I think, reissue. The inner sleeve's a bit torn. It didn't have an inner sleeve when I got it, so I just gave it this one. The vinyl on this one's not in too good shape, but it plays okay. Try and get this one. Here we go. Okay, now I'm going to show you my CD copies. This was the first CD copy of it I got. This was from the free original albums classics Simon & Garfunkel box set, which is one of my early Simon & Garfunkel CDs I got when I was just like getting really into their music. And this set also contains Sounds of Silence and Bookends. And here's that one, which is how I kind of first heard the album. It replicates the vinyl nicely. It's on this label. And this CD one, this has a couple of bonus tracks. This has Patterns and a poem, the demo versions of Patterns and a Poem on the Underground Wall, which are nice to have. And this is my other CD copy of it. This is from the Simon & Garfunkel Complete Album Collections box set in 2014. This is packaged very similar to the vinyl, and it replicates the original Columbia label that it was on. Okay, so now it's time to go over all of the album's tracks. So, the first one we start off with is Scarborough Fair Canticle. Like 2 titles in one. Scarborough Fair Canticle. This is a nice opener for the album. This is one I like a lot. This has appeared on Greatest Hits albums. This one, Scarborough Fair, was originally a traditional English ballad. It was originally kind of like the most common variant that was used was like the Scarborough Wittenham Fair from like Yorkshire. I'm not sure how Paul Simon got it or would have got it, but he and Art Garfunkel made their own version. But Paul picked up the song in London in the 1960s from a guy named Martin Carthy, and he'd picked up the song from the Macaulay and Seeger songbook. Simon and Garfunkel sent it in counterpoint with Canticle, which was a reworking of a song that Paul had in 1963, this kind of anti-war song, to a new melody kind of composed mainly by Art Garfunkel. And this appeared on the album, and it was a single in 1968, and that was a kind of like after The Graduate. It peaked at number 11 in the US charts, and I'm not too sure what it did in the UK, to be honest. It might have not charted in the UK, but anyway. Nice song to open the album, and this has appeared on many Greatest Hits of Simon and Garfunkel. It's a nice song to start the album on, and yeah, it's a really good one, Scarborough Fair Canticle. Then we have Patterns, which is the next track. Patterns I really like, the kind of guitar feel and the kind of the little percussion. It kind of makes it sound like a kind of jungle type of song, which is quite nice. I really like the kind of vocal performance. The lyrics are kind of how about life is like this maze following patterns which are, because we are trapped in them, difficult or to unravel or control. So this is a song I like. Patterns from 1960 from the album, and this is, like I say, is one of the demo from the album and the bonus CD that I have. So yeah, good one to have. Good one, Patterns. I don't know what I'm saying here. Then we get Cloudy. Cloudy's quite a nice little song with the acoustic guitar. This was one that Paul Simon co-wrote with Bruce Woodley from The Seekers, and The Seekers would later cover this on their album. It's a kind of employs a breezy, almost jazzy musical style, with its title serving as a point of departure for a scattered whimsical text. But it's quite a nice song. I like this one a lot, Cloudy. It's a nice song. This one doesn't appear in CDs too much, but it's appeared in a couple of compilations I've got of Simon & Garfunkel's, like the Essential Simon & Garfunkel in 2003. And I think it might have been on the Tales of New York compilation CD in 1999. I could be right or I could be wrong, I'm not sure. But I know it has appeared on like compilations before, but good song, one of my favourites. Now, I wasn't sure about when I was doing this next track whether to do the US track listing or to do the UK track listing, because this next song does not appear in UK pressings, but I'm going to talk about it anyway, and that's Homeward Bound. Homeward Bound was released on UK editions of the Sounds of Silence album a year earlier in the year, and then it appeared on the Parsley, Rosemary and Thyme album, not in the UK but in other pressings. This was released as a single, and I have the single downstairs, I forgot to bring it up with me, but this has been recorded in the Sounds of Silence sessions, and it's a favourite of mine. It peaked at number 5 in the US and number 9 in the UK, and it's a favourite of mine. Paul wrote this song during his time he was living in England. I think either at Widnes train station, which is in the northwest of England. And Homeward Bound would be a song that Simon & Garfunkel would play in concert, as with Scarborough Fair Canticle, in the years that followed. So yeah, great song, one of my favourites. It's a really nice, great song, one of my favourite ones there, Homeward Bound. Next is the Big Bright Green Pleasure Machine. I quite like this one actually, it's quite a good one. This was written by Paul when he was in London, apparently watching his clothes in a washing line. This song kind of takes a cynical view of the advertising on Madison Avenue in New York City. It kind of references the hippie movement as well as during the Vietnam War, as well as a series of unanswered personal questions. But this song was later used on the Graduate soundtrack. You can hear it a bit in like one scene of the film, like when they're in like a drive-in or something like that. You can hear the song in someone's car in that scene in the Graduate film. So yeah, they used this one in the Graduate, which is a good song, and it's a favourite of mine. This song was released as the B-side for the Dangling Conversation, which we'll touch upon later on, in 1966. So yeah, it's a great song. It's a really great one. Then we get the 59th Street Bridge song, Feeling Groovy. This is a great up-tempo one. This is a nice one. It's kind of like I think there's a 59th Street Bridge in New York where Paul was staying. And this song was named for the Queensboro Bridge, which spans the East River between the New York City boroughs of Manhattan and Queens. It became a popular unofficial alternate name for that landmark. It's a really great song, I really like it. It's got a nice up-tempo, upbeat song, and this would be one that Simon and Garfunkel would play in concert as well. And this has appeared in Greatest Hits along with Homeward Bound and this song. Yeah, great one of my favourites. Really nice up-tempo, upbeat sort of feel-good tune. 59th Street Bridge song, Feeling Groovy. Great one. Then we turn it over to side 2 and we have the Dangling Conversation. Now, in a concert in New York in 1967, Art Garfunkel said that this one took the longest of all the songs to write and record, and it's a personal favourite of mine. It's one I like a lot, the Dangling Conversation. This was released as a single in 1966 and it peaked at number 25 in the US. It didn't make it onto the UK charts. This one Paul viewed as an absolutely amazing disappointment to him that at the time, that as previous Simon and Garfunkel singles were reasonable hits, he felt as though this song may have been a bit too heavy for a mainstream audience, but I think it's a favourite of mine. And again, this has appeared on compilation albums along with some of the songs in this album. This one has appeared in The Essential Simon and Garfunkel in 2003, and I think it appeared on Tales of New York. I could be right or could be wrong. Let's look at that CD again, because I do have it downstairs, but I didn't bring it on me. So yeah, great one, Dangling Conversation, one of my favourites. Flowers Never Bend with the Rainfall. I like this one. This is one that again was recorded during the Sounds of Silence sessions in December of '65 with Homeward Bound. It seems to kind of set time period. This was released as the B-side of I Am a Rock, which was from the Sounds of Silence album, and it's a really great song, one of my favourite ones. One that I like a lot. So yeah, one of my favourites. Parsley, Sage, Rosemary and Thyme. Sorry, the Flowers That Never Bend with the Rainfall. All over the place here. One of my favourite ones from this album. Then we get a simple desultory Philippic, I don't know how you say that, brackets, or how I was Robert McNamara into submission. Now, this is a kind of Bob Dylan style song, and this is one that Paul had written on his first solo album, the Paul Simon Songbook, which he recorded while he was in London in 1965. And this had different lyrics, and they kind of changed the lyrics to this one for this version. And he re-recorded this one for the album and changed the lyrics, and the list of names have been revised. He mentions people like President Johnson, President Lyndon Johnson at the time, who was the president at the time. He mentions, well, that's in the original version, but in this Simon and Garfunkel version he mentions Phil Spector, a famous American producer, Lou Adler as well, Roy Halley, who was their producer and engineer, the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, Art Garfunkel, Mick Jagger, Andy Warhol. He mentions a lot of people in this version, so he kind of mentions a lot of people, famous people within this song, so it's quite a good one. And I like the ending bit where it says it fades out, he'd hear a clunk and he goes, "Oh, I've lost my harmonica," and it's quite a funny clunky ending to it. Next up is For Emily, Whenever I May Find Her. This is a nice song sung by Art Garfunkel, and it's one of my favourites from Simon and Garfunkel's catalogue, and it's one of my favourites from the album. Paul has often said that this song is not about an imaginary girl called Emily, but it's about a belief. Well, that song Overs from the next album, Bookend, would be at the kind of end of that belief. It's a great song, one of my favourite songs by Art, and a live version that they did in 1969 was released as a single to promote, as a B-side of America, to promote Simon & Garfunkel's Greatest Hits album in 1972, and that live version has appeared on Greatest Hits albums, but the studio version appeared on a compilation album called Tales of New York, I think. And this is one of my favourites. I like the studio version and the live version, but this is a nice song sung by Art. Paul with the guitar, playing nice kind of melodies to it, and Art Garfunkel singing the song brilliantly as usual. Art Garfunkel's a great singer. Yeah, great one. Then we have a poem on the underground wall. Now this is a kind of nice soft. This is kind of a song, about this, tells a story about this guy who like writes on this kind of 4-letter poem. You could probably have your own idea what he said, what that poem is on the wall with his crayon. And they kind of like this last train underground's closing. It's quite a nice song. It's a good one. One that I quite like, and this is one that appears in the demo on this CD, and it's just Paul on the acoustic guitar. Quite a nice demo, actually. I would advise you check out that demo. It's just Paul in the studio playing it on the acoustic guitar, which is quite a nice version to it. Good one. A good one. Then the last track is a bit of an experimental piece here. It's 7 O'Clock News Silent Night. This is a kind of experimental track where they combine Paul and Art singing the Christmas song Silent Night, and they combine a news broadcast, so it mentions a lot of stuff that was happening at the time in like 1966, stuff like they mentioned Martin Luther King, they mentioned President Johnson, and of course later President Nixon. Yeah, there's all sorts of things. It kind of gives you an idea of what was going on in the world in America in 1966, and it even mentions like Vietnam that was happening. It's a nice kind of haunting piece to close the album. It's quite a good piece. I quite like the fact that they did a bit of experimenting with this one. It's quite a good one. I like the guy that they had do this was a newscaster named Charlie O'Donnell, who was then a radio disc jockey, but he did the voice of the newscast, and you can hear the music and the vocals on one track, on one speaker, on like your left or right, and you can hear the news and the vocals. You can hear the news on the right, and you hear the Simon & Garfunkel singing in the middle. Quite interesting how they did that in the 60s back then. So yeah, really good. So that's my review of Simon & Garfunkel, Parsley, Sage, Rosemary and Thyme. The album as a whole gets a 10 out of 10. It's a great album. It's a favourite of mine. One of my favourites from 1966, one of my favourites at the 1960s, and one of my favourite kind of Paul Simon and Simon & Garfunkel albums they did together. And yeah, it's definitely up there with Bridge has been a favourite of mine. I like all of Simon & Garfunkel albums. There was never a bad album in their catalogue, as far as I'm concerned. They could just do no wrong, Simon & Garfunkel. They were definitely one of the greatest artists of all time. Definitely. So yeah, hope you enjoyed this video. If you like this album as well, leave a comment. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more content on the channel, or if you'd like to see me do more content, or if you want to see my previous content on the channel, then you can do so by subscribing. And we hope to do another video quite soon. I've got plenty of stuff in for the next vinyl update. There's not that much vinyl, there might be mostly CDs, but we'll just need to wait and see how it kind of pans out. I may decide, like, oh, I've maybe got enough, I'll do the video, or I may wait till a bit longer, but there's definitely going to be another vinyl update coming. But yeah, hope you enjoyed me talking about one of my favourite albums of all time. Definitely would like to do more of these in the channel, and yeah, me talking about people's albums generally as well. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you for the next video.